Around this time of the year, Canadians prepare to file their taxes before the 30th of April, as it is the deadline for filing taxes and paying them. With COVID-19, the lockdown, the virtual services, the procedures could get a bit tricky and seem to be difficult, especially for newcomers and immigrants who moved to the country during the lockdown and didn't have a chance to do this before, or do not know how to do it or where to go. Especially that the taxes systems are different from one country to another. Today, we are going to explain to you the main things you need to do if you are filing your taxes for the first time, or if you think that taxes are scary. Just don't panic and watch.
Tax is not something to be scared of. Tax is supposed to be there to benefit you. And overall, getting your taxes filed could mean getting some more money back. So, why not seize that opportunity?
In the middle of the pandemic, Desiree Lewis started her business in her neighborhood in St. Jamestown, trying to help those who are filing their taxes for the first time, or those who need to be educated about the tax system, or simply people who need someone to file their taxes for them. It was challenging for her during these circumstances. However, she's managing to push her startup forward and to educate people about taxes.
What is the main issue or point that many people don't realize about taxes?
I think the primary thing that people don't get about tax is that it's there to support you. It's there to support social activity. It's there to build roads and schools and keep you in a stable financial position. It's not there to take your money and take things away from you. And I think that getting that understanding and having people really grasp that that's what tax is meant to do is very difficult because, when you come here, especially as a newcomer, you don't understand the tax system and it becomes something scary to you. And I really want to break that stigma and allow people to understand that tax is not meant to be scary. It can be overwhelming, but not scary. And, getting letters from the CRA or any governing body is always sometimes a little scary for people. But picking up the phone and talking to somebody, I want them to understand that it's just a person with a job, just like you or me.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
Desiree's vision is to make the idea of filing taxes easy. So she made Easy Taxes. She offers many services, including personal tax, small business, shared economy, tax education, and many more.
Personal tax filings as well as small business tax filings. We focus on the share economy because we noticed that, this is when I say share economy, I mean the people who are doing Airbnb, Uber, Lyft, those things, even Instagram sales. So there's a huge marketplace out there where people are conducting business. Because technology has made it easier for us to conduct business on all levels of all kinds of platforms, and these people, they may or may not know that they have to report their income for tax purposes. They may not know what benefits they could get through the tax system for it, and things like that. As well, we do GST, bookkeeping, things like that as well. And during the summer months, I try to offer tax education. So we try to align and make sure that our, customers or people coming to our website actually has access to tax education, throwing little tips and tricks out there, as well as following the CRA's tax guidelines on how to educate.
That's very powerful because it's one thing to do the service, but actually to offer education, that's very, very powerful.
When I say I'm going to educate somebody, I'm going to give you the basic understanding of tax so that you are not scared about tax, so that you understand what should you bring to those appointments, what should you bring, what should you do as well. If you get a letter in the mail, don't just throw it in the corner. Open it, read it, call the number on it, figure out what they're asking for. Don't just hide. Because I notice, I get a lot of individuals who, these are hardworking individuals, and they tell me things like they've never done their tax returns or they haven't filed it in 10 years, that they owe the government money. And I think to myself, I just by knowing a little bit about their situation, I can tell them right away, everything you just said is not true. You probably don't owe the government money. They probably asked you for something and you didn't supply it, and then they reversed your tax returns, waiting for you to supply that document because they don't ask for documents up front when we file it, right? They ask for it afterwards.
Yeah.
And it could have been simple as writing a letter and explaining your situation to, get you out of that audit. And a lot of individuals don't do that. They just they get scared and they throw the letter in the corner and then they just hide. I get sometimes individuals where, I did somebody's tax returns 10 years back. The CRA owes them $20,000.
Wow.
And it could be that big. It could be that significant to you. Um, Whereas you thought that it was something detrimental to you, it could be actually a benefit.
So, what should I get ready for my tax filing? Should I keep all the receipts throughout the year? What are other sources that could help me to file my taxes?
There's a few source documents. So you mentioned receipts. First off, tax returns are usually done based on your T-slip. So these are slips you get from employers, from educational facilities, things like that, from social assistance programs. You've seen them T4, T5007, T8, T3, there's a whole lot of T slips out there, right? Those slips, the CRA's actually made that side of the process a lot easier. They created mandates that all T slips needed to be submitted to the CRA directly. So they have it on file for you already. And the deadline for that is February 28th. So after February 28th is when everybody's T-slips should be online. So your base amounts for most of your income should be visible from the CRA side. So that's a document that you would receive. You'd receive it in the mail or from employers, but you don't necessarily have to keep it, okay? But it is one of the most important documents, so I, of course, do suggest you keep it. What I also do suggest for people now is to take a picture of it and save it on their phone, right? Save it on your computer, scan it, do something digital with it. I take the same process and I apply it to receipts. So when you talk about receipts, the type of receipts that you get that you would use for your tax returns, businesses aside, because businesses have different functions. But the receipts that an individual would use is like, for example, if you had medical expenses, your rent receipt, or your property tax, things like that. These are source documents, but they're documents that you can get again. So they're not, you got it once and you're never going to see it again. The one document that I would say is the one that you would probably not see again is a donation receipt. If you did charitable contributions or if you did political contributions for the year, that's probably the one receipt that you probably should take it, scan it, take a photo of it or something, because it's one of the most sought after ones, and it's the one that you probably would not be able to get a copy of, right? Everything else you probably get a copy of. When it comes to business tax returns, like small business tax returns, you have a lot of different expenses that you could be keeping receipts for. So what I usually recommend is there's tons of apps out there now. Apps that your bank wants to do this for you. Your bank has integrated apps in it that allows you to take a photo of the receipt that you just charged on your debit card or your credit card. So I do tell people to utilize those apps. They're free. Almost all of them are free. So taking a picture and storing it with a transaction seems to be the easiest way to go forward in terms of keeping your receipts. Receipts also, they, over time, the ink on them fades. So I really do recommend digitalizing it. And I love programs like Uber and things like that send everything to your email. Now your bank sends everything to your email too. They don't want to do any paper transactions, and sending things to your email just is even easier because that's got like 3 servers backing it up. So even if you delete it, it's not deleted.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah, that's perfect.
But one of the best things I always tell people is try to use your card system to your advantage. So you use your debit card, you use your credit card, keep using that.
Because you can find it again. Yeah.
Exactly. Sometimes if you can, the CRA, like I said, individuals just like you and I working at the CRA, right? So, they might ask you, prove this number. You don't have the receipt, but then you say, oh, you know what? I did that on my bank account. This is the transaction. It's got a little line there. It's got an amount. I can put those together and write them a letter.
So what are the most common challenges with the process itself with taxing files, especially for newcomers and during the pandemic nowadays?
Oh, that's a great question. So in general, when doing tax returns, the two biggest hurdles you always encounter is language barrier, first of all. We are in a diverse country, right? People come in from all over the world with different backgrounds, educations, and different languages. And we have to first fight that battle, communication. Whereas, all of us have to have some standards of English or French in order to enter Canada. That doesn't mean that you're completely vocal about it, right? You might be able to write, but you may not be able to speak. And dealing with that has always been a issue. When we were doing in office services, it's a little bit easier because you can give somebody a document and tell them to read it. You could try to explain it. People's body language tells you whether or not they've understood something, whether or not you have to explain more. But with COVID, we have to do all of this online. It's hard to communicate, and we never thought that communication was so hard. But in the tax world, it gets even worse, right? Because you have language barriers to start with, and then you have technology issues. So with COVID, technology has become a big part. And in my business, especially Easy Tax Services, the platform I built was to do everything virtually, so that often people can't find time to come into the office 9 to 5. So I tried to be flexible and say, okay, we'll do virtual appointments and we'll do mobile tax returns. Send me all the stuff you need. Um, in fact, I try to make everything paperless. So I tell you, don't send me anything. I'll call you. You'll give me some information. We'll connect, and we'll go from there. And that's the process I generally follow with my business. But I do know that people, it was easier for them to get a piece of paper. They walk into an office, they bring some documents with them, and in 30 minutes they walk out and they've done their tax returns. They pay the person at the front, right? Now we have we have to do everything virtually. Even the payment process is difficult. Getting you the documents to sign off is difficult. And so technology has become one of the biggest barriers that I have personally in my business. And I'm sure that all the other tax accountants out there are experiencing the same issue. Many of them have started drop-off programs, but the drop-off program delays the process. Up sometimes 10 days later, you can get your tax return process. It's such a pile of drop-offs, right? So that 30-minute session has really expanded into a lengthier process. And us taking the time and effort to just understand and break down those barriers. So language, technology, and communication, just in general.
With a neighbor like St. Jamestown, what are the challenges most people face with filing their taxes, especially with low income?
So low-income residents and the people in the community generally, awareness is the key thing, right? Um, a lot of them don't have a tax accountant they go to on a regular basis. We do have a lot of immigrants in the community as well, so people who are just here for the first time who don't know anything about the system. So awareness is key. Just knowing that this is one of the requirements. When you step into Canada, this is your new requirement, file a tax return. And at some point, somebody tells them, and then they scramble and they try to find the nearest place they can find. So I've had, there's Google is your friend. So you Google. But yeah, in the community, I found that awareness is the first one, that people are not aware that they need to do this or don't know how to do it, don't know how to start the process. I'm just not sure. So just reaching out to a tax professional is always a good idea. So I do recommend to people to try to get a tax professional that they can identify with and who they think that they can continue with, because filing consistently with the same person is also beneficial to you because they know your history. Everybody's taxes are different and specific. I can give you advice, but I cannot give your friend the same advice I gave you, because every situation is different. It doesn't matter if you all work in the same place, you're the same age, you came into the country the same day. I bet you there is something different about it.
Yeah, it's like a family doctor.
Yes, there's always something different. So, within this community, like I said, awareness is key. I think is the biggest one. And then, of course, pricing. Pricing is another issue, right?
Yeah.
Um, you're low income, you don't want to get charged $150 to do a tax return. Um, you know, because the point is to get money back in your pockets, not the other way around. So, you know, I try to make sure that our business is priced nicely for individuals. We do offer several discounts as well, and we try to really facilitate the need of the clientele.
Yeah.
So you try to create a level of legitimacy and
Mm.
make sure that it's not going to be a situation where people think that they're being misled.
That's right. How do you deal with cash issues? Like some people, like would be, especially in St. James community, would be working, like paid under the table by cash, or would like to file taxes in order to receive government benefits when they need them, such as unemployment benefits or old age pensions. What advice could you give them, and how do you deal with the cash issues in general that it's not tracked?
So, in general, with people getting paid under the table or working, however which way they work and make income, I give them advice from as neutral perspective as I can. I try to advise them of what their responsibility is as a resident in Canada and how this can benefit them, and advise them on how we can make their tax situation different and things like that. Um, uh, so I don't know if you wanted to touch on like the payment process and things like that. So I offer, unfortunately, in my business, you can only do things with me if you are technology inclined. So you do have to have a bank account on some level. You don't have to have a credit card, but everything does come to you by email. So it's a one click and you pay, one click and you sign system. We try to make it as secure as we can at the same time. But I do offer advice first always. So one of the first things that I do is I do free consultations. So when somebody calls me, I ask them about their tax situation and I probe for questioning. I probe with different questions to try to understand their situation and just let them know that they're in a safe space and they can tell me different things. But I do also tell them, hey, don't tell me things that could be used against you. So let's answer the question I asked, right? Answer the question I asked.
Hmm.
And I tried to give I had immigrant parents. I came to this country when I was 9 years old, but my mom was here for about 15 years before that, right? I had like so I have immigrant parents. All of the members of my company do, right? So this is one of the things we understand. We understand how people struggle to get into Canada, how they struggle to make life happen and work, and what the struggle is with immigration and getting your residency and things like that. So I feel like we have a very good perspective on the issues at hand, and we're able to offer advice according to everybody's specific situation to get them to that better place. So low income residents, usually I let them know about the other options they have for income sources. That's one of the key things. I have a very clear understanding of social benefits. As I mentioned to you already, that the tax system is there to support you, not to create an unstable environment for you or a financial detriment to you. So when I see people who are in low income positions, I tell them about other programs they can utilize. Um, I tell them how they can educate themselves to get a little bit more ahead in life, to raise their income status. Um, and overall, I know a lot about the social assistance programs in the country, different benefit programs, job programs, things like that. So I definitely try my best to advance their standing whenever I'm faced with somebody that I think that I could help.
Wow,
My sister, her background, she's uh, she has a master's in women's studies, and she was undergoing some legal studies as well. And we try to pool all of our resources together. She worked for some years as a social worker as well. So we pool all these resources together and try to really offer our clients the best advice we can, not just on tax. Sometimes it's called tax planning when we do this, right? We do tax
Right.
planning as well, right? So we tell our clients, you're in this position today. Let's see how we can get you to this position tomorrow. Another few months or something like that. These are some options available to you.
For you as a startup during these difficult times and with your experience, how did you find the reaction of your clients towards your services in the beginning and now?
So at first, there's a lot of explaining. Um, I like that, as I mentioned, my sister is my office coordinator, and I had to actually go through a training session with my sister to explain to her how to answer the phone, what information to get from somebody, what to tell them is the next step, things like that. There's a lot more explaining happening. Um, and a lot more flexibility I had to implement as well. Am I going to do Zoom calls like this one? Am I going to do phone calls? Am I going to try to meet people?
Yeah.
Meeting people became like a no option, but I did have the one or two people who really wanted to hand me a document in my hand. And, so I scheduled like, okay, I will meet you on the corner on this time.
Exactly.
Um, follow the COVID protocol, keep your mask on,
Mhm.
put your stuff in a Ziploc bag, things like that. And it was kind of funny to, do these type of exchanges. That it was
Yeah.
really funny to do them. So, just following those practices and making sure that the business actually survives is key. I think at this point. So my clients at the beginning, they were a bit, it's apprehensive and skeptical because when somebody walks in person, you treat them at face value, right? They come in, they've got documents in their hand, they're ready to do their tax returns. When you get somebody on the phone, like I've got fraud calls where people are just calling me to try to get information out of me, or they're not serious about actually filing their returns with me, so they waste their time, things like that. And you got a lot less of that in person, right? Because when somebody walked in, they walked in.
Mm.
um, but managing the clientele now is it's also a tricky process.
The tax system varies from one country to another. What is different about the Canadian tax system? And how this procedure that might seem complicated is actually in your favor?
In other countries, they do taxes different. Some countries have no tax. Some countries have a flat rate tax, where they, just charge you 20% off on top of everything. And other governments pre-assess you. Our government tries to allow you to have an individual situation. And in allowing that individuality, it creates the complexity that's within the system, right? So let me explain that a little bit better. Um, when I say it allows you to be individualized, first of all, we don't pre-assess you. So we don't say, oh, like I mentioned earlier, the CRA requires all T slips to be sent to them, which means that they can assess your tax returns, right? They can look at all your T slips and say, oh, this person made $70,000. That means they're required to pay 20% tax. This is the bill. What did they pay? Up, they missed paying some. Let's send them a bill. They could do that. That's absolutely an option of the CRA, but they don't. They do it sometimes, but they don't usually use it as their base platform. What they do is ask the taxpayer, "Hey, Mr. Tax Person, you have income. Do your tax returns because your income does not define your situation. You are an individual. The CRA does not know if you're married and have two children, right? They do not
Right.
know if you live in a home, if you live in a shelter. They do not know if you live in an apartment. They don't know this. And your situation and how much you pay for tax changes based on those variables. So it's really
Mm.
important that they do that they ask you these questions. So that's why the onus is on the taxpayer to do their tax returns, not on the tax authority to tell you what their tax returns are. And in doing that, it gives you the opportunity to grasp at more benefits, right? So somebody making $70,000 who has a dependent now only has to pay tax on $50,000, not 70. That's a big
Mm.
difference,
Yeah.
right? And guess what? You've already paid the tax on the 70, so that's called a tax refund.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow. Okay.
and then we have things like sales tax. We have things like you have sales tax, you have your trillion benefits, you have other benefit programs out there. So, we try to facilitate your life in Canada. And I think that's one of the biggest things that people don't understand. That's why I said like tax education has become a bigger part of my business than even just doing the tax returns, right? I want to help people. I want to make sure they've got their tax returns, that they're compliant, that they've done what they need to do to be an upstanding citizen in Canada. But at the same time, I want to make sure that they know and understand that this system is not meant um, to cripple you. It's meant to help. At the same time, you will have individuals who are single, make a lot of money, and they are ending up in a position where just nothing counts, and the CRA may as well just pre-assess them because they owe money.
Mm.
9 times out of 10. So, um, those individuals usually say, "Oh, I'm not doing my tax returns," um, or they
Yeah.
do it because they want to make sure that they keep compliance. But the point is that the mass majority of people living in Canada or in Ontario, let's be more specific, in Toronto, are not those ones. Are the ones
Hmm.
who are owed money for the most part, to tell you the truth. And in my community, especially the St. James community, we're the ones owed if you tell them your situation.
Right.
And so I
Yeah.
want to make sure that that service is out there and that we are doing that. So.
Wow. Thank you very much. Is there anything else you would like to talk about or to educate our audience about while they're filing their taxes?
No, just I think my guide, the whole point of my entire interview with you has been just remember that the CRA is just people, any tax authority, whether it's provincial or federal, it's just people, individuals like you and me with a job to do, and it's nothing to be afraid of. Just you know, you can be compliant. You have 2 years to do your tax returns if you think you owe money. Um, and if you do owe, you can work out a payment plan. It's not so difficult. It is just simply a phone call. And that's really the message I want to send is that um, tax is not scary.
Please do not forget to like, comment, and share to our channel. Follow us on all our social media platforms. And for more information, please check out our website.